Hello crafty friends and welcome to my channel. I'm Adrienne Bosey of Alice Scraps Wonderland. Welcome to part 2 of my Holtz Sizzix Coffin Box vignette tutorial. In this part of the tutorial, I'll be assembling all of the pieces you saw me work on in part 1 of the tutorial to create our vignette scene. If you missed part 1 of this tutorial, I'll have a link to it in the description box below. I'm using a bunch of my Halloween Idea-ology from my stash, so I won't have all of the products I used listed in the description box, but I will have the newest Holtz Sizzix felt dies I used, plus some of the other essentials linked for you. Let's get into the second part of this tutorial. I'm picking up where we left off by working on the cathedral window some more by adding the chain to the hitch doorknob. Getting the larger link around the doorknob requires me taking the rest of the chain off that link with some needle nose pliers. Once free, I place that larger link over the doorknob, then reattach the rest of the chain. Remember to never pull your links or jump rings open, always twist them. I'll be placing this chain over this bone and gluing the bone down in a minute, but I want to add a little more decoration to this chain. Every creepy cemetery needs a lock on the gate, so I add one of the Idea-ology lock and keys with a bit more of the chain. Then I slip the free end of the chain over the bone and glue the bone in place with Prima's Heavy Body Gel and set it aside. While that adhesive on the bone is curing, I move on to assembling my other die-cut pieces together. I glue my grassy knoll die onto the backdrop that covers the entire back of the inside of the vignette box, creating sky and ground. Then I use some of the 1mm thick foam strips to adhere the Tombstone silhouette piece onto the background. To add to the spooky sky, I glue the moon, one of the clouds, and the 3 bats down using Sizzix Express Glue. I glue the layers of the potion bottle together, then set it and the tiny raven aside for a little later. In the first video, you saw that I glued the outside layers of the box down except for the side that I'm adding the hinge of the cathedral window to. Now I work on gluing the inside pieces in. I use scrapbook.com's 1/4 inch double-sided adhesive tape for this. Once the little scene is glued to the back of the vignette box, I use my micro Dremel tool to drill a hole in one of the bottom corners to put some tiny lights through. Then I glue the backdrop strips I cut for the sides and the top of the inside of this vignette box in place. You'll notice that I have not covered the bottom of this box on the outside or the inside. You can cover the bottom of the inside if you want, but I'll be adding a texture paste to this later. Now that the glue on the cathedral window's bone and chain is cured, I add the acetate to the back side of the cathedral window. I apply Sizzix Express Glue and then spread it out with my finger before pressing the acetate down. I use some small clothespins to hold the acetate in place while the glue dries. In the meantime, I work on altering this little Idea-ology tombstone. I still have some Halloween remnant rubs with gravestone epitaphs, so I cut out and apply one to the headstone. I also want a little text inside, so I pick out this "Was Buried Good and Dead" sticker and apply it to some of the black mixed media cardstock. I fussy cut this out and then shape the sticker around the handle of a paintbrush to give it more life. I know some of the other ideology pieces I want to use in this vignette, so I pull those out and place them in the coffin box until I'm ready to glue everything in. I decided this vignette box needed some coffin nails. I drive some of the ideology tack nails into the outside of the vignette box with a small craft hammer. I skipped the side that hasn't been covered in paper yet. We still need to attach the cathedral window gate. Speaking of, the glue is dry on the acetate, so I apply glue to the back of the fussy cut cathedral window backdrop and then glue it to the back of the acetate. This will cover up the ugly unpainted backside. To glue the cathedral window to the box, I use a combination of double-sided adhesive tape and express glue. I make sure the cathedral window is lined up so the bottom edges are flush, then press the hinge onto the box. Then I cover the hinge and side of the box with a final strip of backdrop paper and add a few more tack nails to that side of the box. I decided to grunge up the tombstone a bit more, so I applied some of the same watered down black acrylic paint that I used on the cathedral window to the tombstone. And while I was at it, I grunged up the bones, skull, and drippy candle I pulled out as well. But this black paint was not enough for me. After pulling over the coffin box to my work surface, I splattered the white and black scrapbook.com luster brushes all over these pieces. Make sure you don't leave your coffin box sitting in a puddle of wet paint while it dries though. Now to the bottom of the box. I'm using engraved texture paste. Yes, I still have this in my stash. It's so embarrassing, but I've got a goal to use these up. I use a palette knife to swipe this texture paste onto the inside bottom of the vignette box to create a gravel-like dirt texture. But I don't want this smooth, so after the entire bottom is covered, I press my palette knife into the paste, then pull it straight up. This creates a more natural dirt texture. If you don't have this paste anymore, any gritty texture paste will work, and you can always paint it with brown or green paint. Before adding the rest of my scene, I need to add the tiny lights. I use the green lights from the Halloween set, stringing it through the hole in the box, then wrapping the wire around a popsicle stick. I want to thank my mom for taking one for the team by eating a popsicle just so I could have the stick. Then I hot glue the popsicle stick flat against the back of the box. The stick is a little wider than the box, but I'm okay with the angle. The coffin box and the tombstone will hide the popsicle stick. To make sure the very ends of the popsicle stick are covered and blend in, I hot glue some moss to each end. Now let's glue in all of the fun pieces. I start with a coffin box. I added a little glue to the back of the hinged lid to make sure it stayed angled as far back as it could go. Then I glued the bottom of the coffin in. I added a little hot glue where the top of the coffin touches the side of the box as well. Next, I glued the tombstone in place. I turned on the lights here for a second just so you can begin to see the scene I'm setting. Then I add glue and moss along the bottom of the tombstone silhouette die cut for added creep factor. Then the little drippy candle gets placed next to the tombstone with a bit of moss, and some additional moss gets glued to the tombstone. I want to add a tiny flower to this grave, and I have some old Prima mini sachet flowers in this charcoal color. You can use the little Tim Holtz flowers, but I'm a Prima girly, so that is just what I'm using. I glue a bed of moss to the bottom of the coffin, then decided I needed a pumpkin in the empty space between the coffin and the box. Every spooky cemetery needs a pumpkin, right? Next, I glue the skull and bones into the coffin. I add dimension to my little die-cut poison bottle by curving it around the handle of a paintbrush, then add it to the coffin. Then the raven gets glued to the top of the coffin, and the sticker banner gets adhered to the coffin. I almost forgot to use my mummy cloth. I spritz a bit of it with Lost Shadow Distress spray stain, and then after drying it with a heat tool, I cut little bits, shred them with my fingers, and glue it in place. I used Tammy Baston's tutorial to create a little holder for my tiny lights and attach it to the back of the box. I'll have her tutorial linked below for you. I tack the wider part of my tiny lights wire to the back of the box with a small dab of hot glue. I'll probably have this on my mantle or a shelf, so I'm not overly worried about this excess wire. You can see here as I have the vignette box standing up that the cathedral window doesn't want to stay fully closed from the weight of the lock and other decor on it. I fashion a small chain from jump rings and add a lobster claw clasp to one end. I hook the last jump ring to the ring around the hitch doorknob, then hook the lobster claw over a tack nail. This keeps the cathedral window gate closed. Final touch is just adding a little chipboard sentiment to the back of the box. It's like a little wink to you every time you turn the box around to turn the lights on and off. And here's a little look at the box without my filming lights on, so you can get the full spooky effect. That's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the creative ways that you can use the Holtz Sizzix Vault Halloween dies in a mixed media vignette. Don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Until next time, happy crafting!